Are you looking for a new home or apartment in the region of Wraith? Folks, the Iris of Realty is where you got to go for all your realty needs in Wraith, folks. Iris of Realty, thank you for the sponsorship. It is wonderful. I can't wait to go look at maybe some huts, maybe some castles, maybe some other cool stuff, or just like a really modern apartment in Metrics. Who knows? But Iris of Realty is the way to go. But now the way to go is Fresh and Buds now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds, and today we are joined by a bud. It's been a long time coming to get Dylan from TCG Talk on the show. Dylan, my friend, how are you doing?
Doing well, Tommy. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, me and Tommy were supposed to do this a while back, but I had internet issues, so we're finally getting to be able to do this, so it's been nice. But yeah, we're doing good now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Actually, funny enough, so we were supposed to have Leo from Luminaris that week, and then you. But I had a bunch of questions about Brazil and South America for Leo, and then I was like, oh well, we're gonna have Dylan, and people were like, well, ask him about Brazil. I was like, well, he's not gonna know anything. People on the internet love to troll, and that's we roll with the punches here. But we got a great episode for you all today. We're gonna get to know Dylan a little bit, and I wanted to pick his brain about some stuff about content creation and how Flesh and Blood is in the content creation sphere, as well as kind of talk about some key and transcending in Part the Misfail, which we saw a little bit of over the weekend. I saw some last week as well, but over the weekend during the calling, we saw a decent amount of spoilers come out. So I want to pick your brain on that as well, because I know you play a lot of Ninja and Assassin, and that set just happens to have one of each of those. Yeah. So, but first of all, let's get right into it. You're one of the most consistent voices in the Flesh and Blood community, right? If there is something going on in the game, guess what? Dylan's tweeting about it. You're vocal, and that's the best thing about it. That's what the game needs. We need vocal people. And I wanted to get to know you a little bit, the man behind the talk, behind the TCG talk. And let's start with TCGs, because your channel's all about any TCGs, TCG Talk, right? So let's talk about that. When did that passion for trading card games come to you?
That's the funny thing is, if I can put a year on, I'm not gonna put a year on it. I always put a set on it because people can identify with sets more than years. So back at the start of Monarch. So I guess I was like 20, something like that. I got into the game. I was in the Marine Corps, and I just got back from deployment. And growing up, my biggest hobbies were like esports, gaming, like typical nerd stuff, and then also like traditional sports. Obviously, I'm a big traditional sports fan. But I started to say all right, I need to go do something. Like legitimately, as like a grown adult, I was like, I want to get into a hobby that's like more consistent, especially as I get older. And trading card games and tabletop games were always like appealing to me. I've never gotten into it. And as most people know, getting into a trading card game is like really daunting. Like to get in your first one, like you don't know what's happening. It's that awkwardness of sitting across from a stranger, right? And you don't know what you're doing, all that stuff. So I went down to my local game store in Wilmington, North Carolina at Cape Fear Collectibles, which is an amazing store. It's also owned by an ex-Marine, Sam, who's a really good guy. And I saw Flesh and Blood. And I don't know. I think I went to a Friday Night Magic one time. And Magic to me, it's not to diss on Magic. It didn't appeal to me. It was kind of like really not modules, I guess is the word. Like it's just put a land down, play a card, put a land down, play a card. And the one card game I had played before a little bit was Universes, right? Like Mortal Kombat, My Hero Academia. And that card game's super it's similar to Flesh and Blood, where it's very push and pull, almost like a fighting game, like a FGC. So Magic did not hit for me. But Sam told me, he's like, well, Flesh and Blood's getting really big, because obviously Monarch at that time was really big. And he's like, you want to try this game out? And another guy, Ben Schultz, was there just playing cards with his partner. And he, like most Flesh and Blood fanatics, has like a whole deck with a Birth of Bulk minus a legendary to their side. So he's like, do you like Katsu? He's like, Katsu's really cool right now. And obviously Katsu had just gotten off the back of like the Turtle Katsu days. So he gave me a whole Katsu deck, literally a whole Katsu deck other than Mask Momentum. So I was in my little rinky-dink Katsu with the Hope Merchant's hood as my headpiece, and started playing the game, and I started playing from there. So that's how I got into it. As far as TCG Talk, like that was actually more of a marketing reason. So like I didn't know how many TCGs I get into, but I knew like when you search on YouTube, like TCG is like a keyword, right? So I was like, oh, I'll just make a keyword because I do have a marketing background. It's not perfect SEO, but it made sense. So that's what came up with the name. So that's kind of how my passion went from there, and played North Carolina for a while. Super small scene. Like our armories were 6 people if we were lucky. Halftime it didn't fire. We were just playing together. Yeah, and then I got out of the Marine Corps. I moved to Dallas, which is probably the second biggest scene in the United States, I would say, if not the biggest. Barry Spurlock, Brandon Patrick, all those guys are there. They have an armory every single night. Literally, they have a Discord with a schedule, and it's every night it has a time, and you can literally every day within an hour, there's 1 to 2 armories firing with full 10 to 12 people. The big armories are like 20 plus. Like their pro quest is like 64 people. Like it's super crazy. So did that for a couple of years, and then had a job change. Now I'm back here in Virginia, where I'm originally from, and it's like right in the middle. We have a really cool scene here. We have like good talented players like Merrick Kemp and Mara Ferris that live in Virginia. And it's like in that mid-level. But yeah, that's basically my road with Flesh and Blood, and specifically trading card games in general. But now, yeah, I play a lot of Grand Archive as well. I love that game. Universes, I still play a ton. And then Star Wars Unlimited recently, it's blown up here. The first week of locals, we had like 20 plus people. So that game has gotten huge. So yeah, Flesh and Blood's my main game, of course, for content. But for playing, I probably play 3 or 4 trading card games.
Yeah, I always find that pretty impressive. And I know obviously a ton of people in the community, you know, yourself, Flake. I mean, there's so many people that are into multiple card games. I'm a one card game guy. I was playing a little bit of Magic like towards the end of, or towards the beginning of my Flesh and Blood era. And then I was like, all right, I was done with Magic for many reasons, but like once I got out of it, I was like, oh, well, I have one rule set in my head. That's all I have room for. So I'm just going to like stick with that. So I'm always really impressed with people who are able to just like get a bunch of different rule sets in their mind, a bunch of different games. So props to you, but that's really awesome. And shout out to the Virginia area players. You know, we have a lot of great ones down there. And then, you know, I guess it's not the Virginia. I guess technically DC is the Virginia area. The feisty,
DMV. It's, exactly.
The feisty locals. Got to shout out that team. Always see them running around at events and stuff like that. Now, content creation, you know, you are a huge pillar for, well, the game, but also content creators, right? You have an Excel sheet where it kind of like lists all the different kind of content creators in Flesh and Blood. Really cool, really awesome. Like you didn't have to do that, right? You just did it, right? Which is awesome. So I want to know first, how long have you been into content creation? Was it before, you know, TCGs came into the play? And also tell us a little bit about that Excel sheet.
Yeah, so content creation I'd never done before TCGs, but I had helped manage it. So like I said, I had an esports background. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I'm 2 classes away, got a degree in digital marketing and advertising. And I worked for a marketing agency called AOE Creative. They since had to close down, sadly, just COVID and a bunch of other stuff happened. But we did socials for the Call of Duty League and Overwatch League. And so managing content creators or a content plan, like I'm used to that. So that's kind of where I guess my consistency just comes from. I had to bark at so many people to be consistent. So if I'm not consistent, like internally, it's going to eat me alive. But yeah, that's where my prior content creation thing came from. And for me, like when it came to making content, it had like it was a therapy tool. I won't go too down a emotional rabbit hole, but there was a lot of very impactful, life altering things happening in my life when I started that channel. And that channel, when I tell you, is a therapy tool, like it's not like a buzzword. Like legitimately, that was the only consistent thing I had in my life. So that's why I stayed so consistent, because like every day that was my 1 hour escape. And that's why I don't edit videos. Like if you notice, my content style is very conversational. It's very no cuts, no nothing. I do that on purpose because I don't want it to feel like a job. I want it to feel like I'm sitting in front of like friends and talking. So that's where that came from. And then the content creator sheet, I don't know, I thought it'd be a cool idea. It was like 2 sides of it. One was a selfish reason. Like I hate when I can't find creators. Like if I want to play, like Sorcery TCG is a big one. I like playing that game. Again, another trading card game I play. But trying to find creators is so annoyingly hard, especially if you're looking for something really specific. And one thing that Flesh and Blood does really good is like hero specific creators. But like if you want to learn a specific thing, or I want to watch box openings, or I want to watch whatever, like it's really hard to find that sometimes. And what people don't realize is like just because someone has low subscribers doesn't mean their content's bad. Like everyone starts somewhere, and I've seen flush. There's people on the spreadsheet that have like 50 subs, and their content. And this is no shot at a big creator, is just as good as like DM Ramada, like all those guys. They just no one knows they're there yet. So like I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make a sheet because this is something I wish I had, and it's fun. And every time I do it, I've done it 3 times now, or twice. I'm gonna do it a third time at the end of the year. Every time I do it, I find creators I didn't know about because I tweet out like, "Hey, can you let me know anyone that's on the sheet?" And there's always like 5 to 10 creators that are like, "This person does really good stuff," and I'm like, "Holy crap!" And then I sub to them. So it was kind of a selfish and not unselfish reason, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a really cool tool, and you're totally right. And it's one of the things I try to tell people. You know, when I meet someone who has a smaller channel or whatever, or just starting out, I'm like, listen, the game's not that big yet. Like it's growing at a pretty exponential rate, right? There's no doubt about that. But it's not the biggest game in the world, right? You have to keep that in mind when you're making stuff. And like maybe the numbers aren't coming in, but guess what? If the game keeps growing, those are going to come in with it because guess what? More people come in, more people are going to be searching for stuff, more people are going to find Dylan's Excel sheet, and all of a sudden we're off to the races. And it's just a great way to support the community. Now, in terms of like the creation in the fab space currently, right? We have a lot of different things right now. Like I remember back when I started, there weren't a lot of podcasts, there weren't a lot of hero specific channels, there weren't a lot of things going on. But now we have a lot of it. But how do you view the creation in the Flesh and Blood community currently? And what's some stuff that you think that we as a creator community can improve on?
Yeah, and so when I say so I read this question that you gave to me, and I want to think of it like really pointed. Like I wanted to have a good answer. And when I say these 2 things, it's 2 things that I don't do. So like this is not me sharpshooting. This is legit, even me. One is live streaming. I think needs to get better, and that's just a case of like the game's not quite big enough to like live stream 8 hours a day like you can a video game. So I understand the struggle, but there's really good live streamers. Like Riddler does a lot of stuff. Aggro Blaze streams like every day. There's a lot of guys that do really cool stuff, and I think live streaming and finding unique ways to engage your audience's live streaming is really cool. Like doing like viewer games or viewer tournaments, and those take a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work, and I'm not saying it's gonna like blow your channel up, but if someone's looking to do something individually that's not very common, I think that one's really big right now. The second one I think is the most important one, and this one's hard because it takes a lot of work even from LGSs, is like budget content. If I had $1 for every time I got a YouTube comment saying, "Do you have a budget list? Do you have a budget version? Do you have a list of this under $100?" Like that would be my YouTube revenue. Like it's legitimately that many people. So I think if people, including myself, can make more like budget deck text, more like almost like Fabrica style content, but for casual play, I think that would do really well. It might take a while for people to notice it, and it would be a slow grind to get it going. But the one thing that Magic does have that's really good is Commander, right? Like, and if you want to get those people that just want to make their cool decks, and like do fun stuff, like having a 4-person like channel that does nothing but like UPF, or having a budget-friendly series in your channel, I think could be really good for players. And when you combine that with all the other tools that we have, like Fabiary and Talishar and stuff like that, it creates a easier barrier to entry for a game that, like calling a spade, has one of the higher barrier of entries of most TCGs as far as playing at a decent level. So that's another thing. But that also comes with like LGS is actually hosting like Blitz nights and Commoner nights and stuff, which that's a whole different topic conversation. So yeah, budget friendly stuff and live streams I think are where there are holes, but that includes myself just getting better at those things.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, right? Like there's tons of stuff that we could always do more.
Oh yeah,
but it's tough. I mean, a lot of us also have jobs and just like other content and stuff like that. So it's a matter of finding it. And this is probably a great call out to the listeners/viewers. If there's something that you want to see, just throw it in people's comments. Throw in these comments, right? Like sometimes, listen, this is going to sound crazy, folks. I'm not the smartest person in the world. Maybe I don't know what a certain kind of content you want is. Let me know. I'll try to do it sometimes. I was hesitant on my Riptide deck tech, I will say, because I'm lazy. That is probably the biggest thing. But I did it anyway for all of you. for free. No,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
No,
getting
right.
so much ad money, folks. $50,000 a day.
Oh
It's
yeah, right.
crazy. Now, Flesh and Blood, you are a big Flesh and Blood player and content creator. I want to know some of your favorite cards in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I know some of the answers here for you. I pay attention. I'm reading
Mm-hmm.
tweets. I'm watching videos. But we're gonna get into the fresh faves right now. So first, Dylan, your first fresh fave. Who is your favorite hero?
This is so hard because yeah, most people are gonna know it's one of two answers. So like if I had to give one answer, like you made me pick one, it's Katsu. But Katsu and Arachne are both my favorite for different reasons. Katsu is my favorite to play, right? To actually play the game. But as far as thematics, like just all encompassing, it's probably Arachne. So from a competitive player perspective or casual player, it's definitely Katsu. But from the game holistically, Arachne is just the most like you loving Riptide, like both of them just have really thematics about them and like even down to their equipment. Like Arachne's about the whole thing about completing a contract, ditching your clothes and buying new clothes so you're not recognized. Like all that there's just this little like trinkets in their thematics is really, really cool. But Katsu is my OG one. The Bonza Ancestry line has really made me actually surprisingly not like Katsu as much because it changed from a finesse like elegant mid-range to play it to your big combo deck to now it's just like unga bunga, let's go crazy. Except for he put on a masterclass this past weekend. But yeah, so overall I say it's Katsu, but when it comes to thematics, it's definitely Arachne.
Yeah. Now, here's a question for you, a follow up question to that. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned you had a background in esports.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in terms of Katsu and Arachne as characters, right? Or even
Mm-hmm.
play styles, does that relate to anything that you were into in the esports side of the world?
Not esports, but gaming, like Arachne. So I've always been a nerd for Asian culture, like samurai culture. Like I love Sekiro. I love like different shows and documentaries on like samurai, and I've done a lot of actually like research and history and stuff like that. And I don't know why, it just randomly started being appealing to me when I was growing up. So the Arachne style has definitely gone into that, and Katsu a little bit. I think Katsu. I don't. This is not a shot at LSS. I think Katsu is very much the generic ninja Asian dude. Like, let's be real, he really is. But I think Zen's actually going to be a little bit more attuned to like some of the culture aspects of that side of things. But yeah, Arachne definitely hits my like old school ninja, like Ninja Gaiden, Sekiro, old video game style stuff. And then whenever I play an RPG, I always play rogue,
Okay.
like a rogue assassin. So it definitely probably hit those tones when I saw the hero first.
It's surprising that how much, like playing RPGs and stuff like that, it kind of really all comes full circle when you play Flesh and Blood, which is pretty sweet. Now, weapon. What is your favorite weapon, Dylan?
Ooh, weapons hard. So it's not Kadachi's. This one's the hardest one. I don't. It's so difficult. I would have to say this is gonna be a really left field one. I'm just thinking of a weapon I really like is Sanskar Great Bow. I want that weapon to be better. I had the Marvel of it. I eventually traded to Breezy for a card. I forgot what we traded for. Now I just have the foil version, but that card's just so cool. Like being able to put a card from the top of your deck, like being able to always have a chance. And then in Azalea specifically, it's really cool because it automatically puts the aim counter on stuff. And then Riptide's tried to use it, even though I still think Barbed Undertow is probably better. Not Barbed Undertow. His normal bow is
Castaway.
probably better. Castaway is better. But yeah, I think Sanskar Great Bow is my favorite one. And then I guess a close second for me that I want to see used one day is just Edge of Autumn, the pay one resource to attack for one, but it doesn't matter what you pitch. That's a really cool card that's kind of been forgotten that was in an Ira to Welcome deck, and I want to see that somehow have a place one day. Just if you care about chain links, but you don't necessarily have to pitch a zero cost, is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, well, if Katsu manages to LL, a lot of these ninjas are gonna have to mess around with Autumn, maybe.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Which is it's a great answer. I do love the Sandscour bow as well. I'm hearing rumblings. I need to see it in full practice, but I'm hearing rumblings that the Sandscour Riptide is the real deal. I need to see it happen. I'm a Dreadboard player first, and then I look at real Ranger cards after. But we will see. Now, what is your favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment's Mask Momentum. I know that sounds a little bit cookie cutter, but for me, when I first started the game, like I said, I had Hope Merchants for 6 months, and I legit saved up money to buy Mask of Momentum. And the card, the artwork, all that is it's one of my favorite cards in Flesh and Blood. It has nothing to do with how powerful it is. I just enjoy the card a lot. And that was my first legendary, right? Everyone always talks about their first legendary they pulled or bought, and that was my first legendary that I got. Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's basic anymore because I think you could argue that the Pouncing Lynx might be the better helmet now. But you know, it's Momentum's the old faithful. You know, it's just it gets people in that rhythm of like thinking about how they should block, which is always fun to put your opponent on that kind of axis, which is really cool. Now, what is your favorite run of the mill card you throw into your deck?
My favorite run of the mill card, I don't throw it as much anymore, but I used to force it all the time. Now it's just like if I put it in my deck, I'm actually trolling. But I would love to force it and everything is Break Tide. It's the 0 for 2 ninja cards at yellow. It costs 0 to play. Yeah, 0 for 2. And if you combo it with the Torn Tempo line and Rushing River, it gets +3 dominate, and on hit it puts a card. You can banish top card of your deck. If it's an attack, you can play it next turn. So it basically can give you a pseudo 6-card hand off of like momentum if you do it correctly. But just the artwork of that card, that was like the old school Breeze Rider boots list when people weren't running Breeze Rider boots, where you were trying to like go from one line to another line, which again, the finesse of Katsu is really appealing to me. And the artwork, I want to get that card like on like a metal plating, like you see at like events and stuff, just to have it. That card, but if you're talking about a realistic card that I try to force in my deck all the time, it's probably Salt the Wound. I always try to have like a one of that card. The card's just funny when people are like, no blocks, no blocks, no blocks, and you're like, okay, here's 10. That card's really funny. I've had several times where people are, like Azalea specifically, are trying to like not block because they have a red in the ledger or something, and they're at like 9 life, and then I throw Salt for like 8 or 9. They're like, okay, and they have to give a card. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, I'd say those two.
And I think Salt the Wound's only gotten better because now there's more targets for Pouncing Lynx. You can go get Tenacity if they think that you're going to Salt the Wound. You're just like, no, we're going to do Tenacity. Yeah. How many did you block with? Which is really sweet. And I kind of love that they kind of get this toolboxy thing going on in Ninja, which is a lot of fun. Now, let's talk about some key. I think it's pronounced key. I'm going to pretend it's pronounced key because I named the episode The Key to Success. And we're gonna deal with it. I asked the buds in the buds Discord what they thought. Some said chi, some said key, and I'm gonna go
arms with comments regardless. So you're good.
Yeah. This one is this. I mean, I'm going with my gut and whatever makes my episode title sound better. Now we've seen it. We've seen Transcend, Key. A lot of these cards are instants. Almost actually all of the cards are instants at this point. Basically. We're not going to go into specific cards, but if a lot of them say if you played a blue card, Transcend when you play this, and then basically what that means, you flip it over. It's a key resource. It's basically a gem, but you can activate your hero ability, whether it's Zen, New, or Enigma, and you return it to hand, and then you pitch it into your deck, and all of a sudden we're firing off to the races. So first of all, what was your take on this when you saw it?
Like how when they fully revealed the whole mechanic, like how it works and stuff.
What were you thinking? And then when you saw it, like,
so when I first saw Key, like when we saw the 3 dots, pretty much everyone, even though it wasn't confirmed, we were pretty sure it was Key, right, or Chi. And my original thought process was a little bit actually like bated breath, because for Zen is the easy example, right? Let's say Zen can't activate. We didn't know this at the time. We still don't fully know, but we're starting to get a better idea. It's like, let's say Zen only can activate his hero ability every 4 turns, right? Then he's just a really bad Katsu. Unless his cards are insanely overrated, which Brian Godley is said something on another podcast makes me think there might be something crazy. But regardless, unless his stuff is extremely overrated, he's just a really bad Katsu, because Katsu basically threatens his inability every turn. And then for new, like hers is a little bit hybrid, right? Where her stealth cards have a static effect, but her hero power, like we're talking about here in a little bit, I won't steal thunder, but like you might not activate that the whole game against certain heroes. Like against a Dromai, which will be gone by that time, but against a Dromai, you would never activate that ability. So originally I was like, oh, that's a little interesting. Like it's really cool, but are these heroes going to be playable, or is this going to be one crazy thematic marketing driven set, which honestly would make sense given it's a new country. Like if they wanted to put all their thought into thematics and marketing for this for a new region, I could see it, right? So that was my original thought. When the cards have been slowly been revealed, there's two sides. One, the thematics is amazing, right? Like the art, I have all the Marvel Angels sitting above me right now, and this art beats them in my opinion. And that's no hit to the Angels. It's just like this is the best like card for card art they've ever released in my opinion. And we've only seen 15 cards if that. So like Passover with the light sided like figure and then the dark almost looks like a Rise Up card similar. Like that card is beautiful. And then Stir the Pot is probably the funniest card ever in the history of Flesh and Blood with the cat. And like the people are doing the Lisa Nalgai jokes in the corner. So those are like I said that on my channel. I want one of each of these Marvels just to have, like how you have them in the back of your thing right now with like the codexes and stuff like that. Like I would just want to have them on my shelf. From a playability standpoint, to shorten it, I'm still bated breath because, for example, the most playable card in my opinion is the one that came out the other night, the Path Most Traveled. That is a legendary instant that gives an attack go again at instant speed. That one's pretty good, but even that one, like it's a 0-cost blue that doesn't block, and you have to play another blue before it in order to transcend. So you basically have to play blue, attack, play this, you get it back, you can activate your ability. But in the case of like Zen, if he plays a blue starter, maybe he'll have blues that are starters, which would be really cool. That's not go again. You'd play that, play this card, like transcend, then you can activate Zen ability to go get the second part of the combo. But like you just played essentially 3 blues almost, right? To do how much damage, right? So I'm really interested to see if they've done this a couple sets where like they reveal really cool cards and everyone's like, oh, this is cool, but it's not that whatever. Yeah. And then you see the real part of the set and it's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. So I'm still a little bit bated breath because playing a blue card before playing a non-block blue is a lot to ask, especially the legendary Tiger Domain. Like I have to play a blue card before and I have to pitch a blue to then play that card. So you essentially have to play 3 blues just to get 2 Crouching Tigers and activate the hero ability. So it's not me being negative, it's just me being like interested in like how are these going to be on rate. Maybe the legendary instants are just going to be the thematic side of the set, and maybe there's other cards that transcend that aren't non-block blues, which is very possible, right? And these are just kind of like the fun stuff for the community over in the Japanese culture, which is very possible. So I guess that's like a long-winded answer saying it's still wait and see for me because a lot of these have a lot of hoops. But I also think a lot of these were solely thematic pieces that they just wanted to kind of flex their muscles with the artwork a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, I keep seeing people refer to this as spoiler season. This is not spoiler season.
No, it's
season.
not.
Yeah. It's we're just seeing some cards trickle out, and it's getting people hyped. There's no doubt people are super hyped for this set, right? It seems super thematic, like you said, and you know, huge implications for the Japan release here and the world premiere. Now, I do think that, you know, if we're going to compare this to Uprising, and I think that's like the first thing we should look at, right? Like Draconic and Mystic are, you know, the same thing, except one's red.
2 sides of the same coin. Yeah.
And we saw that I think just the plain Draconic cards were all red, and these are the plain Mystic cards are all blue. And then we're going to get, you know, the full cycle in the actual Mystic class cards. So it should be interesting. Now, I think the one saving grace that we're going to see for like a hero like Zen, you mentioned that Katsu, you know, it does the Zen ability every turn, or threatens it at least.
Threatens it at least, yeah.
Yeah. And if Zen gets a relevant weapon, right? And I have to imagine they're all going to get relevant weapons, and this is.
I hope so. Please let me play something over in Kadachi's.
It's got to be. Yeah. I mean, it would feel really bad. I mean, he's holding like the bow staff thing.
Oh yeah, they made it. Other than New, they made it very prevalent that these heroes have like giant, like Enigma has that giant scroll. He has a giant bow staff, and even New has like we saw like little trinkets of like the Slither and Fang Strike, and then like her fan and stuff. So I think they all are going to have really synergistic thematic weapons. Yeah,
which is pretty important to how the game plan is going to go. And I it's so hard for me to like really say that none of these are going to be like constructed playable, like just on their face. And I think the Zen actually has the most of a good shot of being one of the better one of the better decks to come out of this, because the foundation's already been laid with Crouching Tigers, right?
Mm-hmm.
He obviously cares about Crouching Tigers. We already have a whole bunch of cards that care about Crouching Tigers that perhaps aren't the most played in other decks. We see it sprinkled in the Katsu every once in a while. I always like Kitty Katsu, but if Zen's gonna just do it, might as well just go all in on the Crouching Tigers. Now, I'm concerned about the zero blocks, right? If it is going to be a bunch of zero blocks, especially for limited, you want these zero blocks because you need the key, right? But what if Zen just says, I'm not even going to focus on key, like whatever, I can go do that. Maybe I'll get one, right? But my opponents are all going to be running a bunch of zero blocks that turn into another zero block in your deck for later in the cycle. Like, why wouldn't I just go face? I'm a little bit worried about that. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, the zero blocks are really interesting, especially for a ninja. And then, like in limited specifically, I see Zen as a little bit more of a powered up version that Katsu was in Outsiders. Where in sealed, he might be really bad because you have to get the combo pieces. But in draft, if you're the only Zen player in that pod, you were like, I remember being the only Katsu player in a draft pod in Dallas, and oh my gosh, I got like everything. It was sad, and because I got like all the Surging Descendants and Bonds. So I think Zen could be really good in that aspect where he can just kind of prey, especially in a draft situation. Because a lot of people, let's call spade a spade, are gonna love the waifu tax of Enigma and New, and they're probably gonna force those heroes early. Yeah, I agree with you that there's probably like just a non-mystic or non-key strategy. Maybe you're, especially like with Zen specifically. Well, New though, I think New is gonna be like a force of nature and limited because like it's an all blue set. Like she's gonna be able to play so much of the decks. I think in limited she's gonna probably be something that people force. Yeah, in normal play, like the non-blocks are very interesting. My one hope, and I kind of alluded to it in my last ramble, is that I hope there's a way to make chi without playing the zero instance. Like if there's like even if it's a weapon, my ultimate hope is the weapons do it. Like the weapons say, if you've attacked with a Crouching Tiger this turn, if a Crouching Tiger is hit this turn, this gets +1, and on hit, create 1 chi, or something like that. Something along the lines of that would be nice. Or give us like hoops to jump through. Like, okay, if you've comboed and this hit, like a Whelming Gust Wave type thing, where it's like this gets +1, go again, and on hit creates 1 chi. So like just on hit effects to make chi, because otherwise, yes, if we have, let's say you play 5 of the legendary instance and then like one other one. So you have 6 non-blocks in your deck, which any Leviathan player knows having 6 to 9 non-blocks in your deck sucks. And then they turn the key. So second cycle, when you're down to like 30 cards, now a third of your deck doesn't block. And if you play against any deck that can pressure you, that's really, really bad. So I do agree with you. I mean, as well as I do, I think LSS is probably went through that. So they probably have ways of doing it. And who knows, maybe key is just the thematic fun thing that is more unlimited and more for the culture aspect. And yeah, maybe just like Uziri, who went like half assassin, half not, maybe the final builds of these decks end up being like not as mystic as you think, right? And that's always a possibility. So it all depends.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think like a lot of the initial kind of exploration of that limited format is going to be like, I think a lot of people are going to be like, I need all the key. I need all of it. And then they're going to realize this is bad. I need to have a certain amount of key. It's almost going to be like lands in Magic, right? It's like 17 lands, or is it 18 lands, or is it 15 lands? Yada, yada, yada. How many key do you want in your deck, or transcend cards do you want in your deck? And yeah, it would be really nice. I mean, I would imagine some like common equipment might help with that, because that's a good way to reward players for just kind of playing and not like getting them punished for not drafting enough key. And then also we'll see with the weapons too, and it should be really interesting. I just worry Zen does not like a lot of the key late game, right? Enigma does, and I think that New also likes the key late game. So that could be the big hint here for that format. Now, in terms of Classic Constructed, I'm sure you have your eyes on both the ninja and the assassin here. Where do you see these heroes going for you?
Yeah, Zen's definitely my number one. This is no hit on New, but New to me, she's gonna have to have something that's so overrated, which she could. I mean, we saw it with the chakras, right? Like those chakras, if you transcend, holy crap! Like her reaction is a 1 for 5, which off a
Mhm.
Redback Shroud is free. So you could essentially like play a blue card, which makes you key, then play a 0 cost stealth for 3, and then activate Shroud, and all of a sudden that's coming in for 8. And if that stealth card has any type of odd hit, like it could be really good, right? So there's definitely some ways of doing that, but I think yeah, Zen's the most interesting to me because New's going to have something crazy to beat out Uziri because Uziri is just like they both play off the same mechanic, but they're not too far apart. It's just kind of like reversed. Whereas Uziri wants to play a stealth and then do something else, like New wants to play a stealth, it's the same initial mechanic and then react to it. So no matter what, it's the same like I guess the phrase is the same decision point for your opponent, right? Like, how are they going to react to this stealth card? Whereas I think Zen and Katsu are truly going to play different. And that's one of my predictions for Zen. I don't think Zen, he's going to have a couple lines that go long. Brian Gottlieb alluded to that in the Push Point podcast. He said that it's going to, quote, mess people up comparatively to Bonds of Ancestry and essentially win the game. That was the words he used. That was one of the bonds. Now, whether he's doing the Brian thing and hyping things up or not, who knows? Which he could be. He could be pulling people's leg. But regardless, I think Zen's going to be the best way I can describe it is a weaving ninja, whereas Katsu wants to do this one long chain with like one good combo, and then it's like, okay, that's it. Whereas Zen, I could see it where it's kind of like, I guess Pouncing Key is the best example. When it's comboed with a Crouching Tiger, it's +1 go again, so it's a 0 for 4 at red. It's a 0 for 3 with no go again if it's not comboed. I could see Zen going like Crouching Tiger, combo card that cares about Crouching Tiger, Crouching Tiger, combo card that cares about Crouching. So he just weaves Crouching Tigers to then enable these normal cards to be overrate, but they're not necessarily like one big combo line, if that makes sense. So that's my guess. And if Zen is that way, then he tickles apart my brains a lot different than Katsu, right? Where it's like you're trying to weave, and then you add in cards like Tiger Stripe Shuko in there, which makes Ward cry. So like there's just some really cool stuff, and I'm really excited about Zen. New is on the table. And then for me personally, I actually want to try Enigma. I want to get better at deck building. I have all the Prism. I have all the Illusionist cards because my partner Reagan wants to play Prism. God rest her soul, was her first hero. So I have all the Illusionist cards, and Enigma is just a hero where it's like I have no clue how that hero is even going to be remotely playable, but I want to figure it out, right? And I think playing a hero like that just for fun on the side will make me a better deck builder. So she's also scratching an itch. But yeah, super excited about Zen.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. Enigma would be the first bad illusionist. I mean, right? Like,
True.
Yeah. I mean, like it took the second Prism a minute and maybe a few extra printings of a weapon to get to that point. But certainly starting to make some waves as we saw over the weekend in where was that?
Okay.
Oh yeah. I didn't want to say it because I don't know how to pronounce it. I made you do.
People have said the other way so many times, including myself. Yeah,
I'll stick to my cheeky, issues, but
controversy. Yeah,
but Enigma is very much an enigma right now because like how is this deck going to be good? I understand we have some existing weapons there, but we must be getting something else, right? Because I think Iris of Reality is good and it makes sense. It wants blues and stuff like that. But is it going to be good enough? But it could be. Now, I mean, I don't mind. I play Riptide, so like basically every time I trigger a trap, I'm killing one of those little.
All right, Riptide and a Prism, even though it can get a little out of hand depending on the game state, it is very fun when they do Herald and you're like Tarpon Trap. Oh, by the way, your angel's gone. It's like okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah. So we'll see now. And I want to talk about new into decks like even Riptide that doesn't run a lot of blues or Phi because Dromide's not going to be around, but Phi is still going to be around. Do you think that they're going to print cards for her in a way that allows her to have game into the historically low blue count decks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my hopeful answer is yes. So like my thought was maybe there's a legendary card or a majestic playset that says something. I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of New sees all cards as blue or something like that, so she can play any card. That would be kind of cool. I don't know how overpowered that would be, but regardless, I think it might not be the answer everyone hears, but she might just be like the more limited strong hero.
Mm-hmm.
And in constructed, she is situational, which assassins like that in general. Assassin has auto loss matchups. It always will, unless they completely revitalize the action point economy in that class, or they overtune assassin cards to the point of no return, which I hope they don't, because I'm telling you right now, as an assassin connoisseur, a meta where assassin is the best hero, people would be very upset. But anyway, yeah, to answer your question directly, I think she is going to be a situational based hero. I think some decks she's going to be able to play Terra Sunder into Cranial Crush for free off of 1 chi or 3 chi, and it's going to be great. And then other heroes, it's going to be like, crap, I can't play anything, right? But then maybe with her, maybe she doesn't focus on key as much, right? Maybe she focuses on just overrate assassin reaction based stuff. But then you have to say like, okay, why should I play her over Uziri? So I think the Mystic cards, the Mystic specific cards are going to be the key tell, right? Like if she has Mystic Assassin attack actions, they're just so much better than Uziri's flip. Or if Zen has Mystic Ninja attack actions, they're just so much better than Katsu's combos. Those are going to be kind of like the key points. But yeah, I do think she's going to be situational. I think there's going to be some decks where like you don't use your hero ability, or at least the paid one. So
yeah, certainly. And, I'm interested to see how she pans out. And I think she's going to be good, and we're going to get obviously some new stealth cards, right? And and have some new stealth payoffs, which in hopefully if they're in generic assassin, that will help, the other like young Arachne, and I guess old Arachne still plays some stealth stuff, but mostly young Arachne and Azuri. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where she shakes out. I know people are going to be hyped, right? She is, a beautiful card, right? And
that Marvel, it's gonna be like a $500 Marvel.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be pretty insane. And this art style isn't for me. Obviously, I have the codexes back here. That's my style. I like that kind of thing. But
the grungy, the shreds. Yeah. No, I get you.
I'm in the pits. That's just what I am. And the pits are the savage lands. That's where I kind of like live. But I'm super happy that this art exists and these Marvels exist, because I know a lot of people are gonna like it. And if I open it, I'm not gonna feel too bad about trying to trade it away. So that's hopefully get more codexes. But now, before I want to ask you about some predictions on Part the Misfail. But before we do that, we're talking about Assassin, and this is kind of an aside, right? I want to know where you think Arachne is going to fall post Dromai, because we've seen some Arachne, and I am scared of Arachne sometimes, right? Even as a Riptide player, I think Riptide has decent game into Arachne, but it's still a scary matchup. It's not super favorable, right? And we just saw Taylor Morrow from the Attack Action Podcast day 2 with Arachne, as well as another Arachne day 2 as well. I think that was where was that? This is LA, and so the potential is there. Where do you think it goes after Dromai leaves, though?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's a whole like layers to this, right? So what happens when Dromai leaves for classes that Arachne typically struggles into, right? Which is Guardian is one. So Guardian can tank up a lot more once Dromai leaves, right? Because they don't have to play the Zealous Palatines, the whatever, like the Lightning Strikes, whatever, in order to be able to clear those dragons. But if Guardian tanks up, then Warrior just eats them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so they can't tank up too much. So I don't think Guardian changes too much. So right now, post Dromai, the rough matchups for Arachne are Bravo, Victor, even though Bravo is very winnable depending on the build. And then KO can be a little bit difficult as well, but I think KO is going to hyperspeed LL, so that I'm not worried too much about that. But everything else, like the only other really bad matchup for Arachne other than Victor Bravo is Rhinar. Rhinar sucks because like any deck that wants to block this as Riptide, if he takes your whole hand, there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, exactly. So I think Arachne is going to be in the spot now. Like in my opinion, and people might disagree with this, I don't. Other than the Guardian matchup, Arachne and Uziri are like this to me as far as like where they sit. I think the thing is like most non-meta decks, to be frank, talented players just aren't picking up Arachne, right? But if you took all the talented Uziri players and put them on Arachne, they'd probably have somewhat similar results. That's just my opinion. Because the only really major matchup that is truly feels different is Guardian, because Uziri can get around the defense reactions a little bit easier with her Dominate sometimes. But yeah, I think Arachne goes from a fringe deck to a, if you're willing to pick it up, like a middle of the pack deck. And then super skilled players, yeah, you'll see the day tours, you'll see the 6-1, 7-2s. It's just, can they get over the last hump of that talented top level? That's kind of where it goes to me, because Arachne has very good matchup in a warrior like Hatchet and Kasai. It's a grind. It's never a blowout, but it's slightly favored for Arachne in my opinion. And those arguably are going to be the most represented decks beside KO. So, and KO, as long as he doesn't do the Unga Bunga stuff, like it feels pretty good if you can start to get the disruption out there. So, to answer your question, I think Arachne is very playable. Like last format, I was comfortable taking Arachne to a Pro Quest level or an RTN level, but not a calling. Next format, barring something crazy happening, I would actually be comfortable taking Arachne to like a Battle Harden or a calling, and it's not just a passion like pick, right? It's actually like, no, I can win a couple rounds and maybe go on a run type thing.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm excited to see where Arachne goes, because I think there's so much potential there, right? Like we just saw, what's the new attack reaction?
Coercive.
Oh my, that card is insane.
Yeah.
Like the first time that got played against me, I was like, okay, God, now I want to play Arachne because this card's so good. But I'm really excited to see where it goes now. And back to Part to Misfail though. Before we say goodbye and answer some listener questions, do you have any like major predictions? You know, we've gotten a taste of Part to Misfail, but we haven't gotten the whole meal. What do you think is going to be on that menu?
So I'll go from like least ambitious to most ambitious. Like the least ambitious ones, I think every hero is going to get a synergistic weapon. I think we're not going to have to play Kodachis. I think this is a little bit ambitious. I don't think Assassin's going to play daggers. I think it's going to be a two-handed weapon, and then Fang Strike and Slither are going to be her daggers that do some type of debuff. That's just my opinion, because that legendary says create a Fang Strike and Slither, and we don't know if that's one thing or two separate things, but I could see a world where she doesn't play daggers. And then Enigma's going to get the scroll that is better than Iris Reality. I don't think they're just going to stick Iris Reality on her. That would be really crappy for this type of like momentous set. So I think all three heroes are going to get their own synergistic weapon, and they might all have something to do with Ki or Chi. That's kind of my one. My second one is that Enigma is going to have her demi hero, which some people are saying, right, because of the little blurb in the article saying that she's building to her true form. Now, whether it's called a demi hero, might be called something else, might be called a transcendent state, we don't know. But they even in the trailer, they kind of point to it, right? Like they're like, she's like, she says something to the effect of, if you're patient, whatever, and you see the orb with people like praising to it, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the big transcendent sky art. So I could see her like doing some type of celestial transformation if she has a certain amount of Ki or something. I think that would be cool. And then my ultimate one was a really big one, was that all three heroes will have some type of transformative state. Zen will transform into a tiger. Nu will transform into some type of snake or serpent. And then Enigma will transform into the moon. Whether it's for the whole game, whether it's a like an ultimate transcendent state where everything's just buffed, right? Whatever the case may be. That was my other one, because it just makes sense. Like transcendence is the whole thing around this set, and maybe it is just a mechanic, but it, like they even said in the article, like it takes time. It's a long journey. To me, transcending every turn isn't really a long journey. Maybe they're just talking about Enigma, but I think it's very not out of the realm of possibility that they all have like a transformative state where everything just gets buffed, which would make sense for all these underrate cards that don't block, right? If you want to get to that overrate transformative state, you got to play the weaker cards at the start and work your way to that state to hopefully win the game in the late game. So that's my predictions.
I mean, that's a pretty cool prediction. I'm just thinking like they transform. It says when this transforms, search your deck for every key and put it underneath, and that becomes your soul, and then it does something from that. You know, almost kind of like Singularity, where like, you know, you got a bunch of things and you use them out of there. And I guess Prism does that too. What am I saying? And Bolt. Anybody who uses a soul kind of does that, except for Leviah. Doesn't get rid of her soul that often. But yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can do one kind of minor one. It's not really a prediction. It's like half prediction, half hope. I want to see variants come back into Flesh and Blood. this is not like a hot take. I'm not saying negative. I love the game right now. I love that there's so many heroes we play, but I'm done with all the math. I want to see Eclipse. I want to see old school chain stuff. Like as much as chain irked me as a Katsu player, right? I don't want to see Starvo. We can keep that there. But I want to see more like pivotal, fun, crazy plays, right? Maybe not game ending, but I want to see people like be able to play this one of legendary card that swings the tempo back from them being on the back foot to like slightly in their favor, right? Like if this game's going to be like a fighting game, like a FGC, like they all have that. They have these uninteractable combos that if you thread the needle just correctly, it takes you from losing to even, right? And so I'm excited. I think this set's going to have that. I think this set's going to have cards for all three heroes where it's just like, if you jump through the hoops, if you play this correctly, you are going to mess your opponent up, as Brian Godley says, and like actually like be able to swing the game. Because the math stuff is cool for a highly competitive player. It's stable, but for the health of the game, I want someone to look at Flesh and be like Chain. Like everyone was like, I want to play Chain. That's cool, right? And right now in the game, it's not a hit on the heroes. Like no one's gonna look. Very few people look at Katsu like that's freaking dope, unless you just love Pokemon and tutoring your deck 100 times a game. So I want them to have all three of these heroes seem like that, right? Like from a new player perspective, I could look at all three of these heroes and be like, that's cool. Yeah. I want to buy that, right? So I'm excited for that, and I think that's going to happen in this set.
Yeah, I hope so. Though, I mean, the chain comment. I don't know. I don't want more chain.
Some people are like, I get it. I said from a new player. Yeah, no, I get it.
But no, yeah, chain. When I first started playing, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And you know, we get.
And then
some
you played against it.
Yeah, then I played against it, and I played with it. I was like, oh, that's neat too. But now I'm dying to my own blood debt. And like, oh, now I want to play the better hero that turns off the blood debt, Levia. And yeah, it's got to be good, right? Which it is. It is now. Finally, we got there. But yeah. No, I appreciate those predictions. I'm hoping you're right. I really am, because this seems like a set that could really just do some crazy stuff, and I think crazy stuff's fun. Crazy stuff is a lot of fun. It's great for viewership too. You know, Alex Trehey doing the Sink Below into the sigil. Like, sure, yeah, whatever. Like, that was like a big moment. We want to see big moments on camera, I think. Like, but that like are hero specific, right? Like, oh, this hero did something crazy. I mean, sigil or sink into sigil could be any deck, actually. We'll see. We will see. Now, we do have some listener questions. These come from the Buds Discord. Please check out the Buds Discord if you haven't. Best place to hang out. First one comes from Greg, aka Darth Prentice, who asked, "Who's gonna LL first, Katsu or Arachne?"
Gosh, it's got to be Katsu unless they do something for Arachne. And it's not even. I mean, it's because of hero power, but also just not a lot of people play Arachne. And Arachne, if we're calling a spade, it sucks. But where Arachne is in the metaverse, how much that deck costs to play at a top level right now, like Assassin fully kitted is arguably the most expensive deck in the game right now, because you need the Command and Conquers, you need all the legendary equipment, like you need the surgical extraction and stuff like that. So I mean, that deck's like a 1K, I would say. Whereas Katsu, I literally can build 90% of the Katsu deck for $150. And now that you don't need Mask of Momentum, you can literally build if you don't have Command and Conquers in there, which not everybody has anymore, you can play Standing Order like Pudding Tom did. Like, you can build the entire Katsu deck for like $200, fully kitted. So I think Katsu, both from hero power and from accessibility standpoint, probably well first. And I'm assuming he's going to get a couple cool tools in this set that's going to make him even better. And he's already pretty well positioned right now.
Yeah, and we're on the eve of a ProQuest season where Katsu is getting a lot of play right now. I think that will pick up some points, and already was up there. You know, not quite Phi level, but is going to be probably close to Phi when the dust settles. So thank you for the question, Greg. Capolo asked a question about what you think Zen is going to do. This is a question from originally when we were going to have you on, but obviously we know what Zen's going to do. And we already talked about how good you think Zen is going to be. So I'm going to change Capolo's question. Capolo, you're welcome on changing your question on the fly. What is Zen's weapon going to do?
Oh, that was a good one. We actually talked about this with the buddies. We were workshopping like what we would like to see. I would like to see something that does chi generation. I would like to see like a two-handed bow staff, Probably like a 2 for 3 if they're going to make it on rate. If I'm really, really happy about it, it could be like a 2 for 3 go again that says if you've played a Mystic card this turn or if you played a Crouching Tiger this turn, this gets +1 go again. So maybe it's a 2 for 3 without a Mystic or a Crouching Tiger. With one, it's a 2 for 4. And it says like on hit, make 1 chi. That's what I would like it to be. Because if it's a big giant bow staff, it's got to hit a little hard. And it would be a complete 180 from what Ninja's weapons have always been, which is like these really low to the ground attacky things. But if I don't want it to be too overrate, I would say it's a 2 for 3. And if you've played a Crouching Tiger this turn, or if a Crouching Tiger is hit this turn, you could say it gains go again and on hit create 1 chi.
I like that. I think when I was theorizing with it, I was just imagining a bow staff and like, I want one that if it hits, you can attack with it again, right?
Oh, so, like that actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like go like bam bam or something like that. Like if we were going like really basic, obviously we wanted to do something along the Mystic lines, which is probably what it's going to do. But if I were to make like a generic Ninja bow staff, that's what it would do. So I'm excited. I don't want any no more Kodachis, no more. We'll take edge on them, whatever. That's fine, but no more Kodachis. That's going to do it for the questions, folks. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We have been recording this right after the eclipse. Neither of us could see each other. We didn't wear the correct sunglasses, so I hope that this has all looked good, folks. Please let us know in the comments. Please plug everything that you'd like to plug, and thank you very much.
No, yeah, it's for me, nothing crazy to plug. TCG Talk, my southern accent always screws me there. On most platforms, if you want the content creator list that Tommy's talking about, just go to my channel on my YouTube channel, go to the homepage, and it should be in the playlist section. So if you're new to the game, or maybe you've only seen a couple creators in the game, go to that, and everyone's on there that I know of as of like January. So that'll allow you to like get a good feel for like other creators in the game. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy. Please all check that out. You can continue to find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. Check out the Buds Discord, the Patreon, all that fun stuff. YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. It's all in the link tree below. And please also check out my indie game podcast I do with my cousin Maddie called Fresh Juice. Please check that out. We do that weekly, review indie games. And this week, I think we reviewed a cool one that was, the art was made on a single Post-it note. Pretty neat.
Oh, wow.
And finally, Dylan, I always like to talk about food before we say goodbye. You have had a lot of travels. What's some of your favorite food? Or a specific place you'd like to... Any way you want to answer this.
No. I was in the military for 10 years. All my deployment time in various time frames was spent in Europe, Iceland, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Estonia, stuff like that. I'd say the one that popped in my head, I'll never be able to eat seafood the same way again because I did a 1-month deployment. It really was like an op to Iceland. And their seafood there, as you can imagine, it knocks anything in the United States out of the water. And like you could go to a normal restaurant and cost of living there is very high, so it is a little expensive. That's just because of the price differentiation. But in their money, it was equivalent to like a TGI Friday style meal in price. And they would give you like a seafood like pasta goulash thing. The bowl was like that big. And it had like 4 times the seafood that any seafood restaurant would ever give you in the United States. And their food was just insane. Like seafood here tastes like crap after eating there. So that's probably the number one like memory I have of food in terms of like how good it was.
Yeah, it's funny enough. I mean, I've been to Iceland and yes, you're right. Their food's amazing. Their seafood's amazing. But you're the second person I know from Virginia who's slandering seafood in the United States. Coming to the Northeast, it's good up here, I swear to God.
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
But thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Charmer, but we'll get to him eventually. Please stay fresh and goodbye.